If the theme of 2021 has been buying back my childhood games for retro systems, my modern collecting has been buying hard copies of the digital games. A game that I've put a lot of time into and that I just had to have a hard copy, of course, is Metal Gear Solid 4, which I think when it came out when did this come out? Like the year 2008? Was, I think, underappreciated at the time. It was, very reactionary to the mid-2000s. But I think it is, historically significant to prove that companies like Konami were able to handle the transition to HD at the time, but a lot of other companies were not. But what an achievement Metal Gear Solid 4 is, and I can't wait to play it again in Japanese. A game I have not played yet. That's for some of those of you out there who are watching this, but I do want to play it. Is Assassin's Creed Rogue, which sort of was completely off of the Assassin's Creed radar. I think it came out at the same time that Unity did, but it was released for what was then the previous generation of consoles. This was released when Xbox One and the PS4 was out, but it was only coming out on PS3 and Xbox 360. Why did they do that? And I think you play as a Templar, so hey, it's a different spin on the Assassin's Creed franchise, and I honestly hope they would do different spins. Because to be honest, with stuff like Valhalla and Odyssey, boy. I don't think that the Gran Turismo series is appreciated for not only how many games this series sells, but for the fact they are still stunning games when you put them in. Like the PS3, say what you want about the gray and brown era of the mid to the late 2000s. Gran Turismo 5 and 6 are some of the best looking games ever. And I have put so much time into 5, not so much into 6. But Gran Turismo overall, I think, is an underappreciated racing franchise, even though it does have the sales of one of the other massive franchises. I just kind of wish people talked more about it. It's weird that the folks who recently released Ghost of Tsushima started off with Infamous for the PlayStation 3. And the reason that I have this, even the reason that I originally played it, was because when the PlayStation Network got hacked in, I want to say 2009, maybe 2008, late 2000s, they gave you 2 games for the PS3 from a list of choices, a PSP game and a wallpaper. And one of the games that I chose for the PlayStation 3 was Infamous, and that was back when I was actually able to finish games. And so I had fun with it, and I can't wait to at least give it another shot, and maybe even get Infamous too. Here it is, probably my favorite game of the PlayStation 3, Xbox 360, and Wii era is Mirror's Edge. I have never played a game that I think changed the way that I felt about just video games in general, where you have an almost completely new genre that hasn't even been repeated. There have been walking simulators, but for me, the only parkour simulator, the only running simulator that I can think of is Mirror's Edge. And so, of course, I had to have a physical copy. You will join Mirror's Edge Catalyst right there, and we'll move on to Tomb Raider Underworld, which is the result of the first reboot of the Tomb Raider franchise. We kind of forget about that. I was just reading about this recently. But apparently Tomb Raider rebooted on the PS2, and then Tomb Raider Underworld, I don't know if it crashed and burned or if people didn't like it that much, but they ended up rebooting the franchise after Underworld, and I think they were successful in that second reboot attempt. But I can't wait to actually put this into my PS3 and to, give it a shot and see if it's actually that bad. So I played the heck out of South Park: The Stick of Truth. And why not? It's right here on top of my Switch pile. But here is also South Park: The Fractured But Whole. It's really interesting that the folks who made South Park were so influenced by Earthbound that this is Earthbound of the 2000s. If they were going to make an edgy Earthbound with a lot of swear words and a lot of barfing, which is I think probably the reason why I'm not going to play a ton of Fractured But Whole. But I really enjoyed the fantasy setting of the Stick of Truth. It was very much like getting, you know, a season of South Park in one game. And it was a great 10 hours. If you haven't played it, highly recommend it. You can get it on the PC, I think, pretty cheap. But very fun game. Oh yes, the other result of the PlayStation hack. I picked Infamous, and I also picked Little Big Planet. I honestly can't remember if this game is even good or not. I don't think I ever cleared it. I remember the big thing about Little Big Planet back in the day was that you could like make your own games in it, but I never did that. I only played some of the levels on it. Grand Theft Auto 5 has been released on, I think, probably like 7 different systems at this point. But for me, it all started out with the PS3 version, which I can't wait to pop this in and just see how like poorly it's aged compared to like the 4K 60 frames a second version that we have access to now. But man, what a time to have been alive in like the early 2010s when Grand Theft Auto 5 came out. And I would say that Grand Theft Auto 5 was so huge that it eclipsed Grand Theft Auto 4, which I think is the most underrated Grand Theft Auto game, if you're going to be asking me. But hey, I don't have a copy here to show you, so let's move on. Remember Borderlands? What I find annoying, honestly, about Borderlands is that I don't like RPG shooters. I think this is another bone that I had to pick with Destiny, is that when I shoot an enemy in the head, I feel like they should die. I don't feel like I should do like 29 times 3 damage to them, depending upon the modifiers my character or the upgrades that my weapon has. I'm not the biggest fan of RPG shooters. I think Fallout walks a very fine line, but just Borderlands, it's funny at times, but overall, I would give it a pass if I didn't have it already. Hasn't aged very well. I would say the franchise hasn't. But Black Flag is, I think, probably the beginning of the end of the franchise, even though people said it was great, and I think it's probably still highly regarded. Black Flag is a pirate simulator. You're not an assassin, you are a pirate. And now being a pirate is very fun, and it's cool to sail upon the high seas and even go to Africa in the game, which was really fun to explore all of these different territories. But man, was the legacy of this game, I think, very bad for the franchise on the whole. I know that it recently was re-released on the Switch, but I had picked up Twilight Princess Snow. I had picked up Skyward Sword for the Wii years ago, but for some reason, the people that sold it to me decided to keep the music CD disc. I didn't think the music was that good, but someone thought it was. So I ended up getting the disc for this and completing my copy of Skyward Sword for the Wii. And I gotta be honest, Skyward Sword, it is, I'm gonna shoot hot fire here. You can argue with me in the comments. I think Skyward Sword is the worst 3D Legend of Zelda. I played it for like 2 hours and I was just like, I can't wrap my head around this. The dungeons are really weird because of the motion controls. But that waggle, man, I think that waggled almost killed Zelda. And while I don't think Breath of the Wild is good, that's my controversial opinion, my second controversial opinion of this video. But man, was Skyward Sword not that great. I picked this up for like $3 a couple months ago. It is Pimp My Ride for the Wii. This came out on a bunch of other different systems. You trick out, I gotta show you the back. You trick out a bunch of different cars in the game, and it's almost got like a GTA-like interface. It's sort of like, yeah, a very PG Grand Theft Auto. Do I recommend this? I don't know. If you want to relive the mid-2000s, absolutely. And if you can find it for less than $5. Otherwise, it's not really like a good racing game, so I would maybe give it a pass. I skipped a game for the Gamecube. That's because I didn't have it sorted in the right pile. But here is Animal Crossing for the Gamecube. Shot up in price, probably because 1, Gamecube games are now super expensive, and 2, because of the release of Animal Crossing for the Switch. But what a cute little game. I think underrated. I think probably, I would say probably the best Animal Crossing up until the Switch version. Let's move from the Gamecube. Yeah, let's talk about Xbox for a little bit. Why not? So here's Halo 2, which I had for the PC. And while I think first-person shooters do play the best on the PC, sometimes you just want to have the original version of a game. So that's why I picked up the OG Xbox version, which thankfully is region free. And then moving on to the Xbox 360, we have here Perfect Dark Zero, which I've always wanted to play because I'm a huge fan of Perfect Dark, so much so that I would say that Perfect Dark for the N64 is my favorite first-person shooter of all time, and I've heard some bad things about this game, but I am still excited to play it. And I talked about in the last video how I'm trying to complete a Mortal Kombat set. Well, here is, I think, what is this, Mortal Kombat 9? It's just Mortal Kombat. There was a big reboot back in, I want to say, the late 2000s, and so they released this game for the 360. This is the complete edition, and it has all the classic skins on it. I will say that the Mortal Kombat 3 skins of the characters are the best costumes that you will get in Mortal Kombat, so I'm glad to see them in this game. So you know it's time to end a video when your stacks are getting pretty unruly, and so many games did I pick up in the year 2021 that I'm going to have to talk about the final pickups in a separate video. I hope you will join me. I have been your man out of Japan at J Contra. Thanks for watching, and mahalo.